okay? Matt, kind of? All right. 1, 2. All right, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to talk to you about tips for managing your blockchain today. We hear a lot about POCs, we hear a lot about pilots, but we have to think about what happens in a post-production world if we really want to be successful with adopting blockchain. So my name's Adam Crumble. I've been in monitoring emerging technologies for over 7 years. Prior to blockchain, it was in public cloud, right at the hockey stick of when adoption was going to happen. And we saw something similar kind of happen there. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. Just go over the topics that we're going to talk about today. First is this concept of visibility and continuous monitoring into our blockchain. Followed by that, we're going to do monitoring for security, monitoring for performance, and finally, we're going to be monitoring for health. These are all going to be critical components to making sure that your blockchain implementation is a success. So starting out, moving from POC to production, we're going to have to think about a couple of different things if we want this change to actually happen. With new technologies, a lot of what we run into is really needing a commitment to building a secure, compliant, and reliable implementation. History really shows us that we need to maintain stable and secure environments for these to work. We saw this in public cloud. We saw these in operating systems. We've seen this in databases before. With public cloud, it was really one side of the coin at the very beginning of it. It was either, I don't think that public cloud is very secure because I can't touch my physical on-premise servers anymore. Or you were on the other side of the coin where it was so secure, I don't even know where my own information is being stored. With blockchain, we're just going to see that trend continue, and we're really going to need visibility and continuous monitoring to make that a reality. So when we talk about visibility and continuous monitoring, what are we talking about? First, there are some tools that help with that. Talking about monitoring your network performance, things like looking into your transactions, things like Hyperledger Explorer that looks into the transactions themselves, understand what addresses those are coming from, who's acting on the network, what are the transaction total amounts. Hyperledger Caliper, being able to do performance benchmarking against network under different conditions, being able to understand, okay, with blockchain, there's the idea that there's a scalability issue there. Okay, well, we need to test that network under different conditions to ensure, okay, once we are ready to adopt and we start moving forward, are we going to be ready to scale? Can we take the transaction volumes that come with scaling and adding new actors on our network? There are things like fstats.net, which looks into Ethereum, that looks into performance. Are things working as they are intended to be working? Are transactions clearing in time? Do we have any latency issues, throughput issues? And if we're recording on those, what can we do to go about fixing that? Do we have the underlying infrastructure to support as we continue to scale out? And there's other things like block explorers as well. And really what we really need to do is combine all of these tools into a central dashboard, because when we're talking about enterprise adoption, we're talking about multi-chain across multiple different platforms to support different use cases. Monitoring all of this, to support all of this, to scale out, is going to take that commitment into tools so that we're monitoring all of that. We're going to have to get other people on board too. It's just not operations, it's not just security, but it's going to be a combination of all of those. So some other areas to focus on, that network monitoring, and the operations and configuration management as well. So when we're talking about monitoring for security, we hear, hey, blockchain is secure, it's this immutable ledger. Sure, that's all well and good, but they're still susceptible to hacks. They're still susceptible to malicious activity getting in through endpoints. So you need to assess the security of your blockchain from the very beginning, from your architecture team to your security team. As we're beginning to architect out our blockchain network, you're going to need them every single step of the way. You're going to want to have them sign off on every single thing that you're doing, from POC to pilot to development, all the way into production. So include them from the very beginning. There might be compliance frameworks that are specific to your industry. You're going to want to make sure that your underlying infrastructure is architected to those to be successful. Again, ensure continuous monitoring of security. It's not just about transactions that are occurring on your blockchain network, but it's all about the actors on that. So activity monitoring, who has access to what infrastructure has access to which nodes? What have they been doing? So do we have log management in place to understand what changes have occurred, when it occurred? Do we have a timestamp to go along with that? In the case of malicious activity, you're going to need to look at more than just transactions. You're going to have to understand what occurred, when it happened. So change management is going to be awfully important on that as well. You know, again, you think blockchain is secure out of the box, and in some cases, it's not. So the analogy with that was with the web server. We has SSL, TLS, which is unhackable. Well, that's not entirely true. You know, the traffic that's across that is encrypted, so we don't understand what's happening. It's been 30 years, tried and true. But that doesn't mean your web server can't be hacked. There's still not administrative controls that can get access into, and malicious activity can happen as a result of that. So it doesn't mean that security isn't necessary. You need to have continuous monitoring in place to ensure that if somebody gets into administrative controls, they're changing around the access controls to your application, your smart contracts are being modified in any kind of way, that you're proactively alerted when these changes are, and that you're monitoring for this anomalous behavior that you may deem a threat to your overall security of your network. You know, denial of service attacks, when we're talking about permission blockchains in particular, that can be a really high-profile target for a hack. If we're talking about financial institutions, healthcare, we're talking about large sums of money which can be traded over the network, and somebody bringing that network down can be a primary target. If you have an outage for 12 hours at a time, that's going to cost a significant amount of money. So we want to make sure that we're securing the hosts of the nodes in our network. We're going to want to know who's being added to our network, that they are implementing best practices to keep everything secure, securing our wallets, the endpoints that are associated with those, secure our smart contracts. You know, so what somebody could do if they got administrative access to a financial consortium of some way is they can add new smart contracts to the network. They could modify your consensus algorithm. They could add bad actors to the network. They could change or they could validate transactions that occur, move large sums of money, and before you even know anything that happens, a large sum of money is going to be taken out. That's going to take a lot of investigation. It's going to take insurance. It's going to take understanding of all of the events that led up to that hack, what occurred, and you're going to need to have all of that in place. So again, monitoring for anomalous behavior, double spends, validation errors, all small signs that, hey, something could be occurring. So if you're going to have security on your blockchain network, you're going to need to verify that security is configured correctly. You're going to have to enforce the principle of least privileges for your users. You're not going to have new users added to your network who are going to have write access, admin access. You can even have the privilege of, or the no privilege, you know, just kind of this read only. Very simple. It's going to be the best thing for your network overall, especially when security is involved. Monitor the activity of your trusted users. You know, you're going to need to have log management in place of every single change that's incurred on your network. So if any sort of configuration status has been changed, you want a log of that at some point along the way. It's going to make your life much easier in the event that you have, you know, catastrophic system failures or there's a security breach of some kind and somebody's hacked your network. You know, you're going to want to ensure your nodes are hardened, patched, firewalled, and all of your endpoints are properly secure. When we're talking about performance, we're looking at a couple different things that occur on the blockchain network. Again, we talked about the scalability concerns here. So we really want to understand the performance, why our network is working as intended or isn't working as intended. And there's some key metrics that you want to follow along, that you want to monitor on a regular basis, especially as you continue to grow and scale out. Things like network size, your total network bandwidth. Is the capacity going to be able to handle the amount of transactions that you bring to it? Your transaction error rate, your throughput, or your latency. You know, are transactions posting to the blockchain at ample time? Do we have latency issues there? If we do, how do we fix the underlying infrastructure so that transactions are posting in time? And then we're going to need to know the node resource consumption. We were working with a customer just the other day where they occurred an outage at 9 p.m. at night, and they didn't post transactions for the next 12 hours, and the reason for that was because their AWS instance ran out of memory, so no more transactions were getting posted. 12 hours worth of information weren't getting posted. In turn, it cost them a lot of money that they didn't quite realize until they had visibility into their network and how it worked. So tracking the metrics is going to be critically important, especially when we talk about that scalability concern. In public networks, we have things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, where the transactions per second are relatively low. You know, in more of the permission networks, your Hyperledger Fabric, your quorums, the transactions per second are faster, but they're still going to be important, especially if we have thousands upon thousands of transactions coming in every second, millions of transactions per minute. All of that are going to be important so that they're available across the entire network. Without the entire availability of everything across the network, then we're running into issues. Blockchain at that point has kind of been undermined. It's part of the reason why you want it there. So something you want to do for this is you're going to want to test the system under those different workloads. You know, benchmark the performance of those. You know, be ready to scale. What is the growth rate on a monthly basis of the transaction volume? What is the capacity of the transaction volume for the network? You're always going to want your capacity of your network to be greater than your transaction volume, especially by what your anticipated growth rate is going to be. When you start to reach that hockey stick, there's going to come a point where your network grows too quickly and you're going to have to compensate on the back end. If it leads to system outages, then you're going to have to overcompensate to make up for those other transactions that couldn't be validated to the blockchain in ample time. So you're always going to want to stay in front, make sure the capacity of your network, that you have the underlying resource utilization to go along with that. You're not going to want performance issues, you're not going to want outages at that point. You want your transactions posted in ample time. And then finally, we're going to talk about monitoring for health. And really what this is operations monitoring. You're going to want everybody on board who is a part of the blockchain ecosystem in your business to understand when you're going live, but also be aware of issues as they occur. Your operations team needs to know that if we have new actors on, if we have new nodes, new resources have been spun up, how does that look compared to yesterday? We want to know when something goes wrong, when it occurred, timestamp it. How can we go about and fix that as well? You know, 24/7 monitoring ensures blockchain success, and we have visibility and configurations are always being checked. So you're going to need that. The human error is always going to be a condition when we're talking about emerging technologies. So I hope you were able to take something away from here today. I think I have a couple minutes for questions before we wrap up. Again, I'm with Blockwatch. We have a booth over here. I'd love to show you how you can monitor and manage your blockchain networks if you have one, or to talk more about what you can do to move from POC to production. So. All right. Thank you.